Welcome back. I hope that you enjoyed our first session of the day, and now we are about to start our second panel of the day, titled The Changing Landscape for Biotech Talent in Canada. I think it will bridge very nicely off of our first session. This is sponsored by Stem Cell Technologies. So I'd like to introduce Helen Sheridan, the Chief Human Resources Officer at Stem Cell Technologies, Canada's largest life sciences company. Helen has previously held senior leadership roles in several BC technology companies, known for her ability to build vibrant organization cultures capable of generating exceptional business results. Helen is a creative, value-based, community-centered, and entrepreneurial leader. She holds an undergraduate degree in political science and a master's in organizational systems. She's married to a renowned BC chef and has two sons. Helen loves our British Columbia outdoor lifestyles and gets outdoor whenever she can as a hobby farmer, runner, hiker, and sea kayaker. And I can honestly say Helen is one of the most passionate HR leaders that we have within our life sciences space. So I'm thrilled to have her moderating this session. We've had a lot of fun getting it organized. And now over to you, Helen.
Well, thanks so much, Wendy. It's pretty easy to be passionate about an industry that's growing and vibrant and giving back in the world, as our life sciences industry is in BC. And thank you for your leadership as well in our sector. As Wendy said, Stem Cell is proud to be the sponsoring organization for today's panel discussion. We've been one of the anchor companies in British Columbia's life sciences industry since our founder, Dr. Alan Eves, started the company in 1993. Since then, Stem Cell has grown into a global biotechnology company employing over 1,700 people in 14 different countries. Our staff enjoy the privilege of collaborating with scientists around the world to support them in achieving their research goals. We produce high quality cell culture media, cell separation technologies, instruments, accessory products, and educational resources to scientists around the world working on stem cell, immunology, cancer, regenerative medicine, and cellular therapy research. At Stem Cell, we're dedicated to improving lives through advanced knowledge and scientific discovery, through our commitment to fostering diversity and inclusion in STEM and the life sciences industry, and through investments in sustainability, community, and corporate social responsibility. Rooted in scientific expertise and rigor, we're a company of scientists helping scientists, and we care deeply about making the world a better place. I'm very excited today to be hosting this discussion with a group of leaders who are equally passionate about talent as I am. The recently released BioTalent labor market reports show that Western Canada's bioeconomy consists of roughly 3,800 establishments that in 2019 collectively employed some 48,000 people. We know that particularly since the pandemic began, this number has only grown. Similar to most other regions in Canada, our life sciences companies are mainly small or medium-sized businesses. 97% of those companies are currently under 500 people, so lots of opportunity for talent to come in and grow careers. Today, there's an estimated to be one candidate per 2 job openings in life sciences in Canada. And forecasts suggest that Western Canadian employers will face a talent market where there will be only one qualified candidate per 4 job openings in 2029. Again, a great opportunity for any of you who are on the call considering or already in a career in life sciences. This shortage is expected to intensify as Canada seeks to expand our biohealth manufacturing sectors in response to the lack of capacity we've all been highlighted through the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, today's discussion should be a lively one, and I'm very pleased to introduce you to our panelists. As I say your name, if you can turn your camera on and just give everyone a wave, that would be great so people know who you are. So starting with Diane Gardner. Diane is Senior VP of HR and Administration at Sierra Oncologist, and someone who's been very heavily involved in the life sciences industry in BC for longer than probably she'd like to admit. Karen Chung, bioengineering professor at the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at UBC, part of a very exciting new program there around biomedical engineering. Scott Phillips, who's president and CEO of Starfish Medical, also chairman of the board of Life Sciences of BC. And lastly, Ali Tarani, a founder of Zymeworks. So let's get started. Starting with Diane, would you tell us a little bit about how you've seen the competition for talent change over the years since you've been in the industry?
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, it's grown. I think coming out of 2021, I don't think there's too many people would argue that that wasn't probably the most competitive year that any of us have ever experienced. So it, I think with the growth in the sector, with the, there's just been a huge growth in demand that has, very much been global. I see that very much continuing, the high degree of innovation that is currently taking place. There is just, the demand just continues to grow. And I think the question that's been on everybody's mind kind of for a long time has been, how do we develop scale and meet that demand? And how do we get innovative about addressing those challenges? How do we look at the labor force, not just as the people that live in our own communities or our own cities? How do we kind of look across globally? And I think the pandemic has given us some answers to those things. And I think that's going to continue to evolve.
Like you've seen an evolution from local talent to a much more global availability of talent, and also willingness of your organization to consider employing someone who's not based in BC.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a real-time example of that because I work for Sierra Oncology. We're not a BC-based company. We never really have been a BC-based company. We've always been a US headquartered company. And one of the reasons why I deliberately joined Sierra back in 2015 was in talking to the CEO at the time, Nick Glover. His vision was to really build the company kind of from the ground up as a virtual model, or we had sort of what we like to call satellite operations in different places, both in Canada and in the United States. And after having already been around for a lot of years and gone through the challenges of how do we relocate people, how do we find the talent given all the challenges of the dollar and the real estate market and immigration to Canada and all of those challenges, I was quite intrigued by doing this in a very different way and building a company that was built to be virtual. So we've been at this for a number of years, and sometimes people have kind of looked at us and thought, wow, that doesn't make any sense. But it suddenly in 2020, it started to look like a pretty good idea. So that's been my current fascination with it, which is, how do we do that? And I mean, the great thing about being positioned that way is it allows us to leverage very quickly talent from all over North America. So there's we don't have those boundaries, which has really been terrific.
That's wonderful. Scott, how about Starfish? What are some of the changes you've seen over the last number of years in terms of the climate for talent?
Well, so we hire a little bit differently, maybe a little more broadly, between engineers and software and biotech people, and as well as all the sort of corporate functions we all have, and regulatory and QA and so on. And our original office is in Victoria, so it's always been hard to find people. So it's kind of a paradoxical benefit, actually, to have had to scrap for every piece of talent we've ever had. And we trained some people locally, maybe half, but everybody else, we've had to go all over the world looking for them. And so we're continuing to do that, and we're good at it, and we have a lot of marketing around attracting staff. So I'd say it's been harder. No question, it's been harder for everybody, but it's a game we've had to play for a long time. I think we've hired 20 people in the last 6 weeks. So and we're, you have to discipline ourselves to always hold our standards. I mean, there's always students available graduating, but you need a mix of students, and you need mid-level and you need seniors, right? So it's hard, but it's always been hard. It's just harder. That's all.
Excellent point, I think, about middle management, and and a future challenge for all of us will be to grow that next level of middle management as we all grow organizationally.
I could say just to round off that, I mean, we spent about $200,000 on a leadership development program for managers last year with exactly that goal. How do we take the people we got and raise them rather than having to replace them as we go, right? So it's that investment in developing not just sort of tactical management things, but also leadership. How do you actually give people room to grow themselves and so on? So that's another aspect of kind of maybe what we're being forced to by the circumstances.
Our founder, Dr. Eves, always says to our new students who join, if you're interested in a career in management, stick around, because everyone who's working here right now is going to end up as a manager one day if you want to be. Hopefully not everyone, because not everyone's suited for that career. But Karen, you're in the business of growing the next generation for us in terms of talent. What are you seeing, as the changing demands from your students?
We have historically had students come in with pure life science degrees or pure traditional engineering degrees, and there's been a lot of pressure to graduate trainees who have much more interdisciplinary training, much more interdisciplinary understanding. Everybody, I think, when they're hiring our trainees, will understand that they have technical expertise. And I think that each student will graduate with expertise in what they might think of as their core area, whether it's biology or whether it's engineering. But I think that what we're trying to build is a cohort of students who really have breadth and depth, that the breadth will help them in their future careers in these interdisciplinary teams, really understanding what different team members need, understanding the language to be able to speak that and communicate every day. Those are the kinds of pressures that we're facing.
I find that students are responding to that need for breadth as well as depth.
It's been a challenge. I think that it doesn't make life easy when they have to be able to communicate with all these teams, when they're quizzed about not just design, but actually experiments in the lab that might be focused on the biochemistry side, and also need to be able to do a lot of the quantitative side and analysis. It's challenging for all the students to do that. And I think that it really comes together when students at the undergraduate level do co-op experiences, like, oh, that's why I need to learn all this stuff. Or they do different co-op experiences in different summers or different semesters. I think that really helps them put it into context. I think that graduate students also benefit from having some of these industrial internship or industrial partnerships, and it helps put that into perspective as well. As like, okay, that's why I need to understand much more than just the topic of my thesis.
Ali, can you comment on how you've seen this kind of concept of both depth in science and breadth of experience benefiting individuals who come to work for you?
Well, I just want to say a quick thanks to LSPC and Stem Cell for organizing this. I think it is a great opportunity to have the platform to speak with everyone. There is speaking from the point of view of an employer, and then there's also speaking from the point of view of someone who wants a job. I think undoubtedly one of the things that's happened in the job market is that we've flattened the world a little bit now. People can hire in many different geographies without having that individual having to move up to a particular city, country. You could have headquarters here and you can have employees in Iowa. So that experience and that sort of being an employer's market now has changed into an employee's market. And I want to maybe flip the question a little bit and talk about why this is a great place to work. Because we've always talked about from the point of view of what makes a great employee. Now I think we need to turn the equation and the question to what makes a great employer. And I think one of the great things about Vancouver, about our community, is we do have the horizontal and the vertical. We have great science. We have actually exceptional science. Our universities between Simon Fraser, UBC, UVic are constantly ranked as one of the top universities, and they're constantly reinventing themselves. And they're spending a lot of money in new labs and new research into new spin-outs. When I started Zymeworks, the concept of a grad student starting a company was a little bit frowned upon. Today, it's not. It's actually celebrated. And they're like, come here, we'll support you. Peter Cullis, X, Y, and Z, Carl Hansen, we will support you and we will help you become anything you want to be. So we have the community, we have the support system. And look, for a second, many know that most recently I retired from Zymeworks. Over the last week, the amount of support I've received from community has been incredibly humbling and incredibly beyond my imagination. So I'm now speaking to the 700 or 800 people out there who are going, where do I want to be? In this city, you get the technology, you get the university, you get the science, you get the tech and the biotech, but you also get the people. You get the humanity, especially when times are tough. That is what a great career is about, and not a job. And there's a difference. Everyone can have a job, but not all can have a career like Alan Eves. Let's not forget about that.
Excellent point. And, I mean, I think it's case in point, all the people that are on this panel who are more than willing to dive in and invest a huge portion of their day to comment on this. Scott, what are your thoughts about this idea of, we're part of a broader community and that's something that attracts talent to BC?
Well, I'm kind of known as a community builder in BC, so it's something close to my heart. And I like to think that the companies in our sector don't really exist in isolation. They're not on the moon. They have to hire people that have been trained by other companies or trained by the universities. We're all part of an ecosystem that, whether we're aware of it and celebrate it or not. But we can choose to amplify it. This would be kind of how I think about it. Because together we're much, much stronger. Like in the grand world of biotech, BC is not like the headquarters. Like we're kind of a fringe player. And so for us to punch above our weight, we have to lean on each other and support each other. And that's going to, so really in one way to think of it, and I'm maybe not so much speaking to the audience here, but that for Vancouver to attract senior executive talent that have done amazing big things in the past, they've got to understand their spouse is probably a high performer too. They've got to or maybe that job won't work out. Where else are they going to go? That's only that. So they're actually moving to an ecosystem. They're not moving to a company. So I think that's actually super important for us to understand that we all kind of need each other.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we might be a rounding error in the general industry of biotech right now, but as someone who started in the technology sector in the early 90s in BC, that's no longer true. About Vancouver as a hub for software and gaming talent, and people come from all over the world to work here for all the reasons that Ali and yourself mentioned. And personally, I think the same is true of the life sciences industry right now. I think 20 years from now will be a real important part of the life sciences ecosystem in North America, at least.
Well, so to respond to that, I mean, if you look at, say, AbCellera, I'm not sure what the name will come up more than once in this conversation. I mean, $16 billion IPO, that becomes an anchor tenant that creates credibility for all of us, right? That's and there's a lot of ways where that plays out, but it makes it easier to recruit somebody if they know that, well, if it doesn't work out with your company, maybe there's Stem Cell, there's AbCellera, there's Sierra, there's so many places where they could go that makes it more credible for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And, you know, and also the universities that, you know, Ali mentioned with the great programs like the one that Karen is part of. You know, we've got the bench strength growing all the time. So a great place to invest your dollars. And one of the things I appreciate about Ali's comments as well is, you know, we're talking largely about employment in the sector right now. But there is such a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs as well to start companies, to be part of that ecosystem, and an excellent group of mentors, you know, sitting in the city who are more than willing to help people get started up, as Carl experienced with Upsellera, and many of the rest of us have experienced all of this amazing support. So in addition to sort of that need to, you know, continue to build that ecosystem, Diane, what do you think some of the most pressing talent issues are for our industry in BC over the next 5 years?
I think one of the, and I think about it maybe, you know, BC, but even the broad, you know, sort of the larger industry, the massive demand for talent is really putting a lot of pressure on growing and developing people and having them kind of job ready to scale and take on new opportunities very rapidly. So I think, you know, there's that really good supply of talent kind of coming out of the university. But one of the really pressing issues I see is how do we very deliberately help people grow and develop so that they can scale very rapidly to help us take that on. And people are getting promoted very quickly. They're moving very quickly into new opportunities. But, you know, I think about it sort of in the sense of, to drive world-class companies, we have to create sort of world-class athletes to do that. And how do we do that deliberately so that people have the experiences, the tools to take on those kind of future leadership opportunities, and they aren't just kind of moving quickly sort of through the ranks, but not necessarily picking up the capabilities and skills. So I see this as becoming particularly acute, and I think that's going to become even more acute over the next, you know, sort of 2-3 years as this sort of all moves through the population that work in the sector.
There's some specific attributes that you can think of that are inherent in these world-class athletes as you describe them?
Yeah, I think you know, it's that solid technical foundation. I think it is strong kind of strong knowledge base in terms of the discipline or the field that different people embark on, and as we know, kind of across the spectrum, there's a lot of different careers in the biotechnology environment, whether those be sort of moving on to the corporate side or whether those be kind of moving into the development sciences or the clinical sciences. So, you know, very strong technical knowledge. And then I think there's a lot of interpersonal characteristics as well. I think it's kind of understanding more broadly the needs of the industry as a whole, what it takes to kind of grow and succeed across those. So there's flexibility, there's adaptability, there's leadership, there's strategy, and all of this is now sort of happening. And one of the big changes I've seen, I think, across my career is the pace and the speed to which this all happens. We don't now make plans that are, you know, things that maybe would have happened many years ago in the course of years. We're now looking at how do we shave off every ounce of timeline? How do we move as quickly as possible? How do we think creatively? How do we work interdependently? So I think those are all attributes that are really important. And you get that by having different experiences. And I think larger organizations really, you know, one of the values of working in a larger organization is to be able to take on different opportunities. So growing and developing, there can be a real richness of taking on kind of lateral opportunities. It isn't always just kind of growing up. It's being able to gather, you know, sort of breadth and depth as well.
Karen, when you're looking at students in your classes, you know, what traits do you see that represent, you know, those people that you think, I know they're going to do something special?
The students that most show their versatility and their flexibility, and nobody's going to know everything, but the willingness and courage to say, okay, I don't know that. I'm going to try to learn it. It's not like, oh, I don't need to know any of the programming, or I don't need to understand what a molecule or is, but being able to learn that and go with the flow, I think that the flexibility and versatility are very important. I think in speaking to some of the challenges going forward, not only the technical knowledge and depth of knowledge and breadth, but also be able to communicate what we understand and be able to portray the importance of what we're doing to the community so that the public can understand the importance of what we're doing, that they can trust what we as scientists and engineers are doing, so that when the public can accept it, we can also perhaps influence government policy to support what we're doing as well. I think that those are very important traits.
To translate science into, language that the general public, a government official, your mom can understand what you're working on. Ali, how about you? What do you think are some of the important sort of intrinsic behaviors that you look for in talent?
I think for me, it's always come down to, do you enjoy what you're doing, or are you doing it because someone else told you you enjoy it or you would like it? People that are really successful really like what they do. They really enjoy it. And whether they were a philosophy major and they ended up in medical school, or they were a medical student and became an artist, they just love what they do and they don't dread it. So being really true and honest with yourself, and looking at your coursework and looking at, your thesis and looking at your research, and say, did it for my family? Did I do it because someone told me I'm going to make the most amount of money? Or did I do it because I really, really enjoy it? Look, I'll give you a simple analogy. I don't like running. I really don't like running, but I do it because I've been told it's good for my health. But I'm honest with myself. So if you see me running outside, I'm not doing it because I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm such a runner. Just don't like running. I like playing tennis. So taking a step back as an individual and going, what do I really, me alone, really like, is the first step. There was a little bit of a discussion about, I think Diana was talking about the speed to which people are getting promoted. One of the things they do in professional sports, in the NBA, in the NFL, and these days in the NHL, is that all these folks that are coming straight out of high school, or maybe 1 or 2 years of college, they're sat down and they're being told what's in front of you for the next 5 years. What stresses and pressures you're going to feel. One of the misconceptions about being promoted is that your job is going to get easier. In fact, it's the opposite. It's going to get harder. And every step you go, you can have a manager sit with you and go, I am really happy that you're going to be promoted to the director of this, or to the associate that, or to the executive that. And you go, man, am I going to have it easy now? Or it's going to be easier. I get to sleep more, I get to work less, and I get a bigger paycheck. Not the case.
Company you're working in, Ali, but it's not the same as mine. Let's move actually to that topic of management, Scott, because you've talked about bringing talent in from other parts of the world and other parts of Canada. What do you look for when you're bringing middle management into your team?
Yeah, I love the way Ali phrased it. I like to imagine that we're very interested in the nature of the person. What sort of stories bubble up between the lines? Often the best things that come out of an interview are not specifically the answers to the questions, but the sort of meta narrative in between. What are the sort of patterns of behavior, and how are they showing? Given a choice between A, B, and C, well, I would have written that report, but I had to talk to the client. Or I would have talked to the client, but I had to write the report. Which way do you go? And does that line up with the job, basically, right? Or is there some other job that we're not advertising that they'd be amazing for? And can we? And I'm sure that's what everybody in the room here, we've spent our career doing stuff like that. So obviously they need to have a certain passion, they need to have a certain integrity, they need to have a certain drive, they need to have shown that They like to dig into things. But there's a lot of talk about innovation right now, and but some people are super reliable, and that's their the thing that they're fantastic. They love to get things finished, put a bow on it. Oh my God, those people are amazing. We need those people. You don't put them at the beginning of the project. You put them at the end of the project. And some people are totally unreliable, sketchy. They can't show up to a meeting on time. Their desk looks like a hurricane. We love those people too. You put them at the beginning of the project. And so I think that there's a certain sort of a mutual wisdom required. The employees need to sort of have an idea where their strengths are and not be ashamed of them and just go with them. There's a spot for you. And the employer needs to be good at figuring those things out as well. Of course, we're looking for.
You're talking about diversity of thought, right? You're talking about
not just thought, but sort of people's nature. People's nature.
Who have different skills. So let's switch to diversity and talk about, in that same labor market report that BioTalent released, they talk about 22% of our workers are visible minorities, only 9% recent immigrants, which is surprising, and only 34% women. Diane, what do you think we can do as a sector to improve those statistics?
First of all, I think we have to pay attention to them, and I think we have to take it seriously. I mean, this whole conversation about women in the workforce, visible minorities, I feel like we've been having it for a long time, and I feel like there's something wrong with the fact that we've been having it for a long time, and we really have to get deliberate about it. I think we have to get serious about it, and I think we have to kind of look beyond and say, why is this happening when, for example, 34% women isn't really reflective of what society as a whole is? What are the systemic boundaries to making that happen, or to having something different happen? And there are, I think there's different situations where real steps are starting to happen, where things are being legislated. One of the things that happened last year, of course, in the state of California it was like, enough is enough. Women should be represented appropriately on boards, and we're now going to require that women are represented on boards. It's not that there aren't women who are capable of doing it, but for whatever reason, they weren't being selected for those roles. So again, I think we have to understand it exists, look at the reasons for it, and then take really serious actions, and not just say, yes, we have this happening. We have to get very, very clear about what we're going to do about it, and put a real plan in place.
Have any insights, Ali, on sort of why we're not able to make progress in some of these areas?
First and foremost, I completely agree with Diane's sentiment. I think the notion of enough is enough is absolutely right. We are in 2022, mm-hmm. and we're still talking about things that are reflective of the 1800s. I just want to take it one step further and say, for me, and what I learned over my 18 years at Zymeworks, is that the issue goes beyond XX and XY chromosome. It's not just, we need to have more women. We need to really look at diversity in terms of the LGBTQ community. We need to look at race. We need to ask ourselves, why is it typically our industry has been dominated by one subset of society? And whether that's just men or a certain age group. And if I had to look 5 years from now, I want to see diversity answered in the way the word diversity actually reads in the dictionary. And people should feel safe at work. People should be appreciated at work. People should be promoted at work. People should be sitting on board and management teams. And when you create an inclusive environment, when you create a welcoming, safe environment, you're going to find those things organically happening. And we all know, to really address the elephant in the room and to be really controversial, there are going to be many women that want to start a family, but they're really afraid in their workplace to say, I want to start a family because that's somehow going to hold me back. And the person to my left or right are not going to say it, or they're not this or that. So I got to compete. And that to me is just a frightening thought.
On that topic, you know, I think that men also need to feel free to say, I'd like to take parental leave to take care of my child.
I want to.
When we're both sharing the load of family, then it becomes equal, right?
I want to stay home and I want to take care of the kids. And I love doing that. But somehow our society goes, 3 weeks for the dad, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months for the mom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a bigger conversation that we're not going to solve in 10 or 15 minutes. But if you want to solve it, we've got to unearth it. We got to put the elephant in the room and say, we are equal across the board, not cherry pick it in this situation or that situation.
Or appreciate all of our differences and, create belonging spaces for people, whatever they bring to the table, right? Being inclusive. And maybe we'll have to do that with 4 openings for every, 4 jobs for every one person in the industry, right? We'll have no choice. There's this huge opportunity, with all of these underrepresented groups for us to bring additional talent into our sector.
Helen, I think that's actually really important because I think, the demand really means that there's an opportunity to think about things differently. There's an opportunity to design jobs differently, to recognize that people have different needs at different times. And organizations, I see that being a difference that has evolved into 2022. Organizations that are sort of much more willing to embrace that and look at some of those creative options. Whereas, that's I think a positive trajectory we're on. Do we need to do more? For sure, but I think that really will help drive some of that in the future.
You raised your hand. Do you have something to say?
Just a few suggestions. Absolutely, we're not going to solve this in the next 20 minutes or so. I think some of the example small initiatives and across the spectrum, maybe as examples, I wanted to mention some of the things that we would like to do, perhaps in giving more opportunities to students who might come from a less wealthy backgrounds or who have not had as many opportunities. Summer internships in Vancouver are wonderful. We want to bring more diversity to BC, and some of the students who we want to recruit maybe don't have the ability to just, I'm going to fly across the country, come to BC to do a summer internship because my parents don't live there. I don't have an aunt in Burnaby who can support me. So a little bit more support a little bit on top of the actual internship, I think could bring us a lot more diversity so that those students can get those opportunities. I definitely want to move to Vancouver for grad school and build my career there. For them to see that, I think that a little bit of extra could help. I think a little bit of extra sometimes in mentorship, having examples of people like, that person did it and they're just a little bit ahead of me. So I think a tiered mentorship system can help show people like, I can get there and then I can get there. And it wasn't just because they took the straight route, but like, but they had a little bit of a digression in their career and then they came back and it worked. Like the career about having a family, I've had that experience myself. It's like, I was afraid that all of my colleagues are going to zoom up ahead because they had less demands on their time. Looking back now, I don't think it mattered. And if I tell people like, maybe I felt that way 10 or 15 years ago, but looking back, it works out. Maybe more mentorship opportunities can help bring more diversity as well. So these are just small examples, but little things that we can do maybe can help move the needle, I hope.
Scott, do you have anything to add about this topic?
I think that when we win, then we're not really having this conversation. Like we don't really talk about, we're not going to be talking about genders and races. We're just going to talk about who are the best people. That's I'm a little bit less bothered that, that the companies are not totally reflective of the society that, but I can tell you right now in employees market that anybody who really wants a job and wants to grow, wants to develop, they're going to get that opportunity, regardless of what gender they are, what race they are. So I think to Ali's point, if you create a safe environment where people feel like they have equal opportunity, and the company's interested in their deep potential, right? Anybody who's got potential, who's interested in developing it, that we want to support it. That'd be kind of, I kind of like to start there. Just let's find the potential and then develop it. And if I have a particular soft spot for people who have more potential than they realize, and helping them to uncover that and and maybe that's partly what we're talking about. People who they've never had a chance, they don't feel like they have the potential, and what can we do to help them to amplify that? I wouldn't want to do that on the basis of what color they are or whatever, but probably there's a little bit of difference in that axis. So that's like probably my thought.
At Stem Cell, we're big believers in sort of what Karen alluded to. You can't be what you can't see. And I think Dr. Eves did an amazing thing early in his building of the company by hiring 2 senior women to lead sales and R&D. And we're proud to say that we're 57% female, 50-50 women and men on our board and on our executive team, and 45% people of color in our organization. And I think that's because of a clear a value around just hiring the right people who have the right skills and not necessarily thinking about anything other than that, right? Intellect, capability, creativity, resilience, all the things that we've talked about, and not skin color and not gender. We like to joke that pregnancy is the ultimate stem cell assay. So we're happy to have anyone have babies, and I'm looking forward to hiring the second generation of stem cellers probably sometime in the next 5 or 6 years. So quite a few families at Stem Cell, and we really pride ourselves on kind of that work-life balance to support that with all our participants in the company. There's a comment in the chat, and I had a question for the panel about this interest in pivoting either from academia into industry or even from other industries. Ali, you made a comment about an artist becoming a scientist. What are your thoughts about the opportunities for people to pivot?
The one thing I never understood is, why is it such a big deal? If you really like what you're doing, why is there's this wall, as if like you're moving from North America to Europe? What is the real difference between academia and industry if the ultimate end result, say you're in drug development, is to develop a therapeutic that is supposed to help patients? So this has become my team, your team kind of a thing. My team is better than your team is better than my team, or we do it better than you, or we do it more ethically than you, or not. We all work hard. There should be no shame in this. And I feel like, as someone who came from academia into industry, we somehow want to shame people, or we feel like that there is a shame in that. There is no shame. And vice versa, people who want to go from industry to academia. Because if you're a good person, you're a great scientist, you're a great engineer, you're a great lawyer, you're a great accountant, who cares what the logo says? Does it say UBC, or does it say Stem Cell, or does it say Zymeworks and Epsilera? Carl Hansen came from academia. He was a professor for the longest time. Peter Cullis. And you can very specifically see their fingerprint on COVID. And are they standing around going, woohoo, industry? Or look what we did and you didn't? No. So I think this question needs to be put to bed. We're scientists. I'm a scientist. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm I'm someone that cares about people. I don't go around going, me.
Our founder, was a researcher turned physician turned administrator who was kicked out of the PHSA when he had to retire, and subsequently founded a global life sciences company. So it's never too late to do all of those pivots, I think. What about the pivot from another industry? As you know, like, would you hire, Scott, someone who came out of, I mean, obviously you will hire people who came out of the software industry into your company, but, would you hire someone out of healthcare in your organization?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
do you see that as additive?
Absolutely. So right now we're interviewing CFO candidates. And I can tell you, if we were to look for a CFO who had experience in medtech development industry at our scale, we'd be talking to people from 5 companies in North America. So it's you're not going to get them. So the question is, how does their diverse experience apply to our situation, right? And marketing, we got a marketing guy whose experience was from Kodak, and I tell you, he's been brilliant. And people across the industry tell us, oh my gosh, we wouldn't even want to tell them how few resources we have in marketing, because they think we have a giant marketing department. So absolutely, I think we've seen that in many ways, that people from diverse industries, that we've been able to embrace them in and help them see the key differences. And as long as they're mentally agile enough to be able to realize they can't be the kind of people that just want to keep digging their trench on that same direction they've been digging it. They got to understand some changes. So.
Come to you next, Karen. So feel free to chime in.
Absolutely. I think that it definitely agrees with something Ali said. What do people really want to do? What are they passionate about? When I'm the director of the grad program in BME, and when I look at all the applications and the letters from students of why they want to get into biomedical engineering, it's because they want to do something that really helps people. All of the essays are about, oh, they had someone in their family had an issue, but they saw that the medicine helped save them. They want to develop new technologies, or they're looking at what kinds of things they can do to help other people in low resource settings. And many of them are like, well, I did another degree, and my background is in some other kind of engineering, or I had another kind of background. But they want to get into biomedical engineering and the life sciences because they want to help people. So I think that, as Ali said, it doesn't matter that you're pivoting, but to help do that, it really inspires them to pivot because they want to help people.
One last question. We only have a few minutes left, and that's about COVID and how it's changed your business and the landscape for talent. I'll start with you, Diane.
So I think COVID for us, as I said, we were working very much in a virtual environment. So, my joke always is, when COVID happened in March, we threw out the milk, turned out the lights, and said, we hope to see you in a couple of weeks. And we never have seen each other again. So what I would say the difference is we went from we got together and we got to meet each other, and we had these in-person situations, to having to navigate for doing that all the time. I currently report to a CEO that I've reported to for 1.5 years, and I have never met face-to-face. We've had many of these kinds of calls, and that's sort of rampant throughout our organization. We have a lot of people we've had to really pivot in terms of just figuring out how to do everything very virtually, how we moved our entire hiring process online, how every meeting is online. So what I would say is we've gotten a lot better at using technology. We've really embraced technology. And we've really tried to leverage kind of the very positive aspects of, how does this really enable us? How do we work with this as our new challenge? So like I said, for us, we maybe weren't as dramatically impacted, and there's also been created a very strong affirmation of, a lot of the ways we were thinking about things and a lot of what we were doing, is really now sort of how it's being done. So, it's changed us in that way. The downside for us has been that other people have kind of figured it out. So some of the competitiveness we had in terms of really being able to sell, hey, look, you can do this job from anywhere. now individuals are having opportunities at many companies. I think the statistic I heard was before the pandemic, 1 in 67 jobs were on a fully remote basis. And after the pandemic, it's thought that 1 in 7 jobs will be. So, you know, that's been I think one of the significant shifts.
For Scott, how about for Starfish? How has COVID changed your landscape?
It changed a lot of things. So start with within about 2 months of COVID, we suddenly had a giant program, the largest program in our history, to make a ventilator for the federal government. That was craziness, and everybody piling into it. And then once we got it done, of course, ventilators weren't really in as much demand as they thought. So all of a sudden that ended, and we had a big hole, and so we've had to deal with a lot of that chaos. In terms of hiring, like we hired, I think, 55 people last year. So it was, and many of them haven't really ever worked in our offices. But on the other hand, we had 190 people. We picked the right week for our holiday party in December, and we had 190 people in a ballroom in Victoria, and it was totally therapeutic for the company. It was totally amazing. So I feel like the sort of the culture is kind of leaking out bit by bit, and I can't wait till we have some more face-to-face interactions. We just spent $10 million, bought a building in Toronto, which is a bet on people seeing each other face-to-face. But we have got way better at technology. Also, we got way better at selling multi-million-dollar programs to people we haven't met, which is crazy. That never ever happened in the past. So,
well, congratulations on picking the right week for your Christmas party.
Thank you. I am looking forward to the return to office once this Omicron sweeps through and goes endemic. So,
Karen, any changes you've seen with your students?
Absolutely. It's been tough for students to be remote. From the classroom perspective, having some of the lectures remote, but only the lab experiences in person has been hard for everybody. But I think that people have been so versatile in terms of developing lab modules and for students to learn in the courses and in the research labs. I think underlining the importance of good communication, that everybody, when they're writing up their documents and their protocols, I think it's much more careful now for everybody so that we can actually work remotely. We get less of those small interactions. You can just bump into people in the lab and, hey, how do I do this or how do I do that? So I think that that's really improved everybody's appreciation of communication during this time.
Really excellent point. That kind of rigor of documentation in your lab notes becomes so much more important when you're not just passing each other in the hall. Ali, any comments on how you see COVID changing the future of work?
Sorry, coming off Zoom. So there is, I'll just again, be controversial something here. One of the things that is going to be critical getting back together and return to office is the ability to pop into someone's room and say, I have an idea, and then we need to collaborate. Or I have a question that is bothering me, or something that I've been meaning to ask. You're not going to send a Zoom invite to someone or do that over a text or a call. The little pop, right? You know, we would go knock, hey, can we go for a cup of coffee or something? I have an idea. And can we work through that on a whiteboard? Innovation, mentorship, care still requires human beings to be in front of each other. And that, again, I go back to the job versus a career. So at some point, as much as everyone is getting comfortable with, I really love working from home, and, you know, I can get up at 5 in the morning and work till midnight, and, you know, everything is where I want it to be. What could suffer, and I ask everyone to think about this, is that little spark, that little something that only happens due to chance. And that is not going to come with a, let me text you or let me do a Slack. That suffers.
Great. Anytime anyone who's ever kind of run into someone in a hallway and, you know, that the eyes light up and something sparks, if any of the entrepreneurs on the line who are figuring out a technology solution for that, you can make billions, but I haven't seen it
Why
yet.
don't we all live in a monastery? Why don't we all
Yeah.
or didn't commit our lives to a life of solo with technology?
Yeah, I agree. Well, we are going to have to wrap up today. I would like to thank all of our panelists for what has been a really enjoyable and robust conversation about the changing landscape of talent. We've definitely learned a lot from one another, and I hope all of you listening in have found the session to be a valuable one. Please note there's lots of sessions left to go today, including a reverse pitch session at 2 o'clock, where Stem Cell, along with some other companies, will be pitching why we're great places to work. And our own Dr. Hannah Lee, who's done her own pivots in her career, will be presenting on some of the reasons why, as Diane said, you know, in some of the larger companies, you can do some really interesting pivots. We hope you'll consider joining that session as well as all the rest, and wish you all the best for the rest of the day today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.